Morning once again, my dear students, and you're welcome to the fourth lecture of PGI 2-in-1 General Agriculture. We have been doing a lot of work in the past month, and today is the fourth lecture. Wow, that is so great. Anyways, interesting all the way. And today, once again, we're learning a lot. We're learning the categories of farming systems. We will be talking about cropping systems also, combining cropping systems, and talking about cropping systems. We have the mixed cropping, we have the monoculture, we have the multi-storage cropping, we have the shifting cultivation, the bush fallowing, and so many more. We'll also be talking about mixed farming. See you in the lecture, and God bless. Bye.
Yes, welcome once again. Like I said in the previous slide, I still remain Alawuddin Yetunde, your facilitator, and my email has not changed from yalawuddin at noun.edu.ng. Yes, the first one we'll be talking about today, the fourth lecture in the series, is evolution of farming systems in tropical Africa. We have defined agriculture in the previous lessons, and we have talked about the classes of agriculture and agricultural products. Now we want to talk about the farming system in tropical Africa. Farming system has been in existence since the very beginning of agriculture. That's even before we were born, right when this earth was established, farming has been in existence. And the farming systems have been evolutionary. They have been uh, evolving from one method, from one system to another. And this farming system, the factors that influence this farming system includes diversity. Sorry about that. The factors influencing the diversity in the number of cultivated crops and variations in cropping systems include cultural diversity, economic differences. When we are talking about cultural diversity, we are talking about differences in culture, variations in culture, like what in Nigeria here, for example, we have various culture, various tribes. So what people are interested in the south is quite different from what they are interested in agriculture wise in the north, east, south of the country, depending on the cultural diversity. Also, economic differences is also a factor that influences the public systems, the colonial background, talking about who colonized us. If it is the British, then we'll be eating more of what, or using more of the cropping system that the British have already inculcated in the system, and otherwise political history, experience, level of technological development, very important, depending on the technology that brings about the diversity in cultivated crops and cropping patterns, and also availability of resources. And it's also important to note that the early cropping systems are based on these factors, and they include that what is being practiced in early agriculture. Traditional system includes the nomadic herding, the shifting cultivation, the rudimentary sedentary cultivation, non-rice based intensive agriculture, special horticulture, and plantation agriculture. These are the cropping systems that were in existence in the early um, times of agriculture. These are the categories of farming systems. We have the traditional farming system and the modern farming system. And under the traditional and transitional systems, we have the nomadic farming, which is a form of shifting cultivation phase one, and the land use is usually 102 years. And bush fallowing is another category under the traditional and transitional system, bush fallowing or land mutation, and that's shifting the cultivation phase two. Then the rudimentary sedentary agriculture, which is the shifting cultivation phase three, which involves 2 to 4 years of land use, and the compound farming as farming for you and your family, intensive subsistence agriculture farming in a compound, and that's like shifting cultivation phase four, okay, for 2 years. And we have terrace farming and floodland agriculture. We also have the Mediterranean agriculture, which is also a form of traditional. Now moving to the modern farming systems and their local adaptations, we have the livestock ranching, and this simply means raising of herds or animals on large tracts of land. So we are talking of very, very large land where you raise your animals, which could be cattle, sheep, and also some ranchers also raise elk, bison, ostriches, emus. These are all animals of ranching nature. So we also have the intensive livestock production, and intensive livestock production talks about you establishing the poultry or the house where these animals are kept, and then you now go and bring their food to them. You don't allow them to just graze or just free range around, pick their food. You go and blend their food, make their pellets, make their feed, make their food made of maize, soybeans, bean cake, all that. You mix everything up. They are well nourished food, and then you bring it to them inside their housing unit. That's the intensive form of livestock production, and it's also a modern system, and you use them for poultry, for pigs, and for dairy. Also, we have the large scale farms and plantations. We're talking about planting farms, planting trees on a large scale, and the planting of arable farms based on natural rainfall, irrigation projects. These are forms of modern agriculture, and large scale tree crop plantation also very important. We also have the specialized horticulture, which involves market gardening, shrub gardening, and fruit plantation, planting fruits on a large scale, your mangoes, your oranges, citruses, all of them on a large scale for commercial purposes, for the sake of export, for the sake of industries coming up, juice companies, and all that. That's the specialized horticultural kind of farming. And we also have the Mediterranean agriculture, which is also modern in nature. Now we are going to be talking about the nomadic herding. And this nomadic herding is important to note that it's common in the arid regions like in the northern part of the country, where the rainfall is usually low, and it prevents the cultivation of crops on a large scale. It's a form of agriculture that involves um, the animal husbandman, to be a man, to be a boy, leading the sheep or leading the flock in front. Okay, they lead them from place to place in search of green pasture. They move very, very long distances. Some of them even walk down south, all the way from the north in search of green pasture, especially grass and water. And this kind of work, this kind of system is also referred to as the transhumance pastoral nomadism. Now, having talked about that, we want to go straight into the cropping system. And by way of definition, the cropping system refers to the type and sequence of crops grown and practices used for crop growing them. Okay, this written in red is just for emphasis, just to note the point and what the definition stands for. So it refers to the type, we are talking of the type of cropping system, and the sequence, how are you going to plant them, in what sequence are you going to plant them, and they are grown, and the practices that you use in growing them. Okay, talking about the types of crop, is it an annual, is it a perennial, the sequence that you going to plant them, is it monocropping, is it mixed cropping, what kind of sequence you crop rotation, and the practices used for growing them, what kind of cultural practices are you going to use. All these are important in the cropping system, and it encompasses all cropping sequences practiced over space and time. It's important to note that over space and time based on the available technologies. First one we'll be talking about is the traditional form of planting, and it is the bush fallowing system. The bush fallowing system. This is a type of subsistence agriculture in which the land is cultivated for a period of time and left uncultivated for several years so that its fertility will be restored. So you have a piece of land like you have in this picture here that is being cropped, cultivated for some time until the soil is exhausted, until the yield is low. So thereafter, piece of land is left to restore its fertility naturally. Okay, after a long period of time, when the fertility has been restored, then you can now go back and stuff on it. So the periodic shifting rotation of fields within this cultivated land is also known as bush fallowing. And in the early times, fallow may be left untilled or tilled, but not planted for the fallow period. Okay, tilling of the land means taking care, cutting the grass, splash and burn system, and pulverizing it, nipping its leaves. That's talking about the till. So you may leave it compact like that, or it may be tilled. That is the bush fire. Also, it's important to note that the fallow systems or the fallow fields were usually used for pasturage of animals. So pasture can also be planted on the land for the fallow period. Okay, instead of the land just left like that, we plant grass for the animals to feed on. And the reason for this is the lack of sustainable, suitable alternative for soil fertility. There was no fertilizer at the time, the traditional system, the very early system, so there was no use of fertilizer at the time, and the soil had to gain its fertility. So how is the soil going to be sustained? That is why it has to be left for a period of time. So the fallow system may be natural, that means colonized by a living weed, or may be planted with quick improved fertility regenerated leguminous weed species. Okay, so you can either leave them so that they can just grow weeds and weeds will just be everywhere, or you plant leguminous weeds on it An example of these weeds that can be planted on it are the Corelia species, the Mucuna, and the Cotolaria species. These are shrubs and herbs that can be planted, and because of the leguminous nature, they can restore fertility into the soil. Also planted, the green fallows are common in some parts of the eastern part of this country due to high population pressure on available land. So an added advantage of this system is the superior competing ability of green fallow species. So what this is trying to say is that the green fallow species are left to grow and they overtake the native weeds in the fallow. So that is a good advantage. Now moving on to the next farming cropping system. This is the shifting cultivation, and in this system, a piece of land is cultivated for a few years, and when the soil is showing exhaustion in form of poor yields, then the farmer abandons the land and moves to another more productive site for cultivation. So just like you can see in this diagram here, where the primary forest, okay, that has been uncultivated. So what the farmer does is that he sees this forest, he sees that wow, it's a piece of land that he loves, that he likes, that is very, very fertile. Then he now goes ahead to clear the forest. And when he cuts all the grass, slashes all the trees and all that, he now burns. He goes ahead to cut and burn the bush, and then later he now goes ahead to cultivate his own crops, his annual crops, and then they harvest it over a period of time. Then you follow it, and then you just leave it. Once the soil is exhausted, you leave it, and it just keeps growing its own crops, just keep growing its own crops and forms a secondary forest. So this shifting cultivation system, when the soil is exhausted, and how do you know? When you begin to have poor yields in your crops, then the farmer abandons the land and moves to another. And unlike the bush fallowing, this shifting cultivation, in addition to periodic rotation of fields, involves an occasional movement of settlements with cultivated fields. What this is trying to say is that the shifting cultivation involves the movement of all your property, all your settlements. You know, when the land is not in use anymore and you want to move to another, you have to move your family, you have to move your settlement, you have to go again, start all over again, build your houses, build your huts. You know, it's kind of time consuming and very, very exhausting a system. But however, the advantages include keeping soil sufficiently fertile where abundant land is available for farming, and preventing the spread of insect pests. Yes, because when you move from one place to another, the pest just dies off because they don't see the crops that they normally plant anymore, so they just die off. So it's difficult to spread pests and diseases this way. But however, these disadvantages outweigh the advantages, and the disadvantages are that you have to have a lot of land, because inadequate cultivable land for food production and the requirement of this large area of land is very, very great disadvantage. Also, inadequate time for soil fertility to restore. Okay, it takes a lot of time for this fallowing. Yeah, it takes years. You know, you are farming on a piece of land for 4 years, and then you leave it to fallow for 10 years. So what are you going to eat during that period? You know, it takes a lot of time, and also it wastes the farmer's energy and resources, because everywhere he goes he has to slash and burn, slash and burn. You know, it's a waste of energy. So the disadvantages are more than the advantages. Now we want to talk about a more modern kind of system, which is a mixed um, or multiple cropping system. And just like the name is, mixed or multiple. So we are talking of growing two or more crops simultaneously, and intermingle without any row arrangement, where a significant amount of intercrop competition. Okay, like you can see in this picture here, you are growing more than one kind of crop. You're growing two or more. Here is maize, here is wheat, maize, wheat. You know, that is on the same piece of land. You have two or more crops there, and you plant them in no particular row arrangement. Okay, just plant them, and there is a lot of intercrop competition because this one involves the survival of the fittest. Any crop that survives better is the one you harvest at the end of the day. And the advantages of this system include security of food and income, security in the sense that if one crop fails, then you can depend on the other crop. Then you're talking about income also, so you still get your money at the end of the day from one crop or even both crops. Okay, and also this system maintains the soil productivity through prevention of soil erosion. You can see here that there's hardly any space in between for rainfall to wash away the soil or something. So there is usually prevention of soil erosion and weed interference. There's no space for weed. Where you are planted everywhere, that even for you to put your leg is even kind of difficult. So there's no space for weed to thrive. And also when you plant legumes, there is also a form of soil nitrogen fixation by the leguminous component of the mixed. However, there are a lot of types. There are many types of mixed cropping system. We're talking mixed. It could be mixed intercropping. It could be relay intercropping. It could be relay cropping. The mixed cropping, the sequential or non-overlap cropping, or the relay overcropping. So these are the types of the. For the mixed cropping, this is cultivation of two or more than two crops simultaneously on the same piece of land without any definite row pattern or fixed ratio. So you are planting without any definite pattern. For the sequential or non-overlapped cropping, this is growing two or more crops in quick succession. You know, the first one is without any definite row or pattern arrangement, but this one is in quick succession on the same piece of land. And the swing of this succeeding crop and harvesting of the preceding crop may be done simultaneously or in a quick succession. Okay, and an example is when you harvest maize potato. When maize and potato are grown, so you now um, by the time you are harvesting the maize or digging out the potato, then you plant another one, which is chili. So it's like a quick succession. As you are harvesting one, you are planting another. You are harvesting one, you are planting another. There's no time to waste. You plant your maize and your potato, you harvest your maize, you plant another crop. While you're harvesting your potato, you plant your chili with in a quick kind of succession. While for the intercropping, this is growing two or more crops simultaneously in alternate rows. You know, the previous ones have no pattern, the other one is a quick succession. This one now is in alternate rows or otherwise in the same area where there is significant amount of crop competition. And there are advantages of intercropping system. Okay, and the first one is greater stability of yield over different seasons. Yes, those crops eventually become stable over different seasons, and better use of growth resources. So you are maximizing food resources using fertilizer for more than two crops, you know, and at the end of the day, you use less of these resources. Then better control of weeds, pests, and diseases, because when you plant different kind of crops, you kind of confuse the pests and the diseases. So it's a good system. And one crop provides physical support to the other. Yes, for example, when you plant yam and then you plant maize, this yam have a break because you need stakes for them so that they can grow their vines on it. So they use the maize as their support. So they use it as physical support in some cases. And one crop provides shelter to the other, yes, because you know the crops, some of them are high, they have large canopy, others don't. There are different types of different agronomic components. So some provide shelter for the other. And erosion control. Yes, erosion is usually controlled because there is no way for the soil to be washed. Because and some crops have cover crops. Some crops are cover crops that cover the soil and prevent erosion. When the rain is falling and hitting the ground, it hits the canopy of those plants instead of hitting the ground surface immediately. And in the small farmers, the small farmers are the most likely to benefit from this particular. Whatever has an advantage must surely have a disadvantage, and this cropping system has disadvantages also. And the first one is the decrease in yield because of the adverse competition. What you have is when you plant so many crops on a particular piece of land, then it now begin to compete for sunlight, for space, and that may cause a setback, you know, in particular crops. Then you have the allopathic effect, that is the some plants kind of secret chemicals that affect the growth of other plants because there are many on the field and some plants don't like competition, so they just secrete chemicals that destroy the plants. And also creation of obstruction in the free use of machines. Yes, whenever you practice intercropping, it's very difficult to use all these combined harvesters and machines because at the end of the day you may destroy some crops in the process. And large farmers, because of this, large farmers are the ones that may not benefit from this intercropping system. The next, okay, we are still talking about the mixed or multiple cropping system, and the next one we'll be talking about is the relay cropping. And just like the name relay, you know, relay cropping involves two crops following each other in a sequence such that the time between the growth period of the two crops is reduced to the barest minimum. So what you're saying is that you plant one crop while you are when it reaches its vegetative stage, then you introduce the other crop so that when one is ready, you harvest, the other one is still on the field. For example, um, wheat and soybeans, you know, you plant wheat first and immediately after 4 weeks you introduce the soybeans, that is how relay cropping is done. And in the relay intercropping, the component grows together for longer. Okay, it grows together for longer. Talking about cassava and maize, you plant cassava and 4 weeks after you introduce maize. So other mixed cropping systems include the double cropping, the triple cropping, alternate strip cropping, and this is for market gardens and vegetable crops. So mixed or multiple cropping system is a very also in the relay planting, you know, seeds seeds or seedlings are introduced and other succeeding crops are also, so that one crop harvest is harvested before the other. You don't harvest both at the same time because of their duration, because of their planting, because of their length of planting. So you harvest one before the other because of their period. Some crops you harvest after 3 months, some after four, some are annual, some are even biannual. So depending on the kind of crop that you planted. Another cropping system is the continuous cropping, and just like the name, you continue cropping on the land. And it's a modern cropping system that involves putting a piece of land under permanent cultivation. Putting a piece of land under permanent cultivation, that is the continuous cropping. And this system is a response to the frequent human population pressure. Okay, when there is scarcity of land, that's when you use this system. You have a piece of land and you just keep using it, keep using it. If it's the same piece of land in this picture here, and it is used in four different ways. You can see that what is planted here is different from what is planted here, and is different from what is planted here, and so also there. So it's the same of piece of land, but different things are planted at different times. So this system is a response to frequent human population pressure when we have scarcity of land because the human population is increasing. So with little land you have to guard it jealously and try and maximize the best use of it. And it also involves, because the modern cropping system involves chemical fertilization and organic manuring. So when you see that the soil is exhausted and you see that the crops are not, crop yield is low, what you do is you apply fertilizers or organic manuring as a way of increasing the fertility of the soil. And the components of this continuous cropping are the monocropping, plantation agriculture, it's also a monoculture kind of system, and the rotational crop. For the crop rotation, which is actually for now the best cropping system, this is the practice of growing a well-planned series of dissimilar. So you are talking of crops that are not the same. Okay, you are growing crops that are not the same and specific types of crops in the same space in a sequential season to avoid the buildup of pathogens and pests that often occur in continuous cropping of plant species. So you are using the land continuously also in this system. But what you do is that you try and partition the land in such a way that you rotate the crops that are there. Like for instance, in this picture here, you can see what is planted here is different from what is planted here and here. So when you harvest the three crops, what you do is that when you want to replant, you change the position of the crop on the piece of land. And this will also confuse the pests and diseases, and they will not be able to thrive there. So the crops, no two crops must be similar. They have to be different, totally different crops. So you're putting cereal, legumes, fruits, tubers, they are different kind of crops. And also, um, because the crops are different, the diseases and the pests will not be able to complete their incubation period before you harvest. So before you plant again, by the time they are trying to reproduce, before they reach their incubation period, you harvest again and you change. So to not make pests and diseases to thrive. Also for the rotation, it may be a 2 year or 3 year rotation or even longer. And the purpose of crop rotation are: one, you want to improve and maintain the soil fertility through the use of green manure, planting live manure, green manure. So what you're doing is that when you harvest these crops, you kind of plow their leaves back into the soil. So as to improve the soil fertility. You also reduce soil erosion, because there are two or more plants on the piece of land. And you also reduce the buildup of pests and diseases. That's the third point, like I explained earlier on. While some pests are still in their incubation period, you harvest, and then you change the spot again so they won't be able to thrive. And you increase your net farm profit, yes, because you will get profit from every of the plants that you cultivate. And also the beneficial residue herbicide carryover, yes. So when you spray the land, you don't keep spraying for over and over and over because the residue is already in the soil. So it now you improve weed control through this process, and it also reduces the reliance on agricultural chemicals and inorganic fertilizers. Those are the advantages or the purposes of crop rotation. Now we are talking of another one which is monocropping. And just like the word mono means one, and you can see in this picture here, this is planting just one kind of crop all through the land. And it's also a modern cropping system, but it's different because the specific crops are grown on the same piece of land in a logical or scientific sequence. You have your spacing, you have your interspace, interrow space, interplant space, you know, in a scientific sequence. And the component crops are selected on basis of complementary or supplementary relationships. You know, you have some that are deep feeders, like the yams, or shallow fillers like the maize. So there's a way between when we plant maize this season, we plant yam the other season, you know, it is based on complementary or supplementary relationship. And this system is chemical intensive because it's monocropping. So the pests and diseases that are there are used to the crop already. They are not going anywhere because you know that you will plant this crop again, so they are there. So you have to use a lot of chemicals to control them. And this is problematic because farmers practice a lot of deforestation and shorter fallowing for this system. They have to clear the piece of land, fell all the trees, you know, and it doesn't encourage afforestation. Now you have the Tongia kind of farming, and this is an agroforestry practice whereby crop husbandry is combined with forest management. Okay, so you have timber crops and you have your annuals also planted in between these timber crops. So it is an important kind of farming system also. So the timber contractors are allocated plots within which they are allowed to fell valuable timber trees and simultaneously use the land for cultivation of annual and biennial crops. For this system also, the forestry seedlings are nurtured along with the food crops. Like I said, you plant your timber crops like your teak, your Teutonia grandis, you plant them with the space. You know they have a large space in between, so you can always plant your annuals, you can always plant your vegetables, you can always plant your maize, even in between. And this will the forestry seedlings will be nurtured along, they will grow along with this annual and biennial on. We have the alley or the hedgerow kind of cropping system, and it involves managing parallel single or multiple rows of perennial woody plants with annual agronomic and horticultural plants and forage crops. Okay, like you can see in this picture, we have the woody plants here, then we have the annual plants in between, we have the woody plants there, the annual plants in between. So what this involves is you're growing agronomic plants and horticultural crops together, okay, with forage crops. So there's the white space in between, which is called alleys, in between these woody species where you can plant your annual crops in between. And the advantages of this alley cropping system is the high soil fertility both from the nitrogen fixing trees and the green manure when this trees, when they shed their leaves, their leaves decompose and add manure to the soil, and also suppresses the weed because of their mulch and canopy. So it's a win-win situation, and also reduces the demand on chemical fertilizers. Yes, because most of the fertilizer involved is organic, is manure, so we don't rely on chemical fertilizers. And also when yams are planted, all these trees, the hedgerows species serve as stakes for the yam vine to grow on. And examples of these woody hedgerow species are the Lucina leucocephala, the Gliricidia sepium, the Linia arborea, so now talking about the multi-story cropping system. Yeah, multi-story, just like a story building. This is two or more than two crops if of different heights cultivated simultaneously on the same field. So you have your oil palm, which is the tallest. Then you plant your bananas also, which are quite tall. Then you go plant your maize, which is also tall, but not as tall as the bananas. Then you go and plant your vegetables, all on the same piece of land. An example is your sugarcane and your custard, onion, mustard, then onion or potato. Potato is even under the ground, so you are utilizing the uh, piece of land very well. Like you can see in this picture, these are the oil palm, very tall. Then you have the bananas also. Then you have vegetables on the ground, and you have even the tuber, which is the potato under. So that's and it's also a practice of different crops of varying height, like I said, rooting pattern and duration to cultivate together. It's the most practiced in orchards and plantation crops because most times these orchards they have a very large spacing, like for mango for instance is 7 meters triangular, for oil palm, sorry, for instance is 7 meters triangular, and 7 meters is quite a large piece of land that you can utilize to cultivate other forms of crops in between. So that is why this pattern is usually used in orchards or plantation crops. And also sunlight, nutrients, land, water and space are utilized in the most efficient and economic way. Yes, because it's the same piece of land. So all these plants are planted so that they are not all deep rooted, so that they will not be competing. So you have the water levels being different according to the kind of crop that is cultivated, and it also improves soil health and physical properties of the soil, and increases the biological activity of the soil, talking about the microflora and the microfauna. That is why this story cropping is. Now for the mixed farming. Mixed farming, just like you can see in this picture here, involves complementary grazing of crops like the arable agriculture and livestock, which is the pastoral farming on the same piece of land. This is the last piece of land. You can see the crops in front here, you can see the animals here, and they kind of have a relationship such that the animals feed on the grass, while when they feed and they excrete, their excreta is used as manure for the crops also. So they have this kind of relationship, and it is also important to note that the animals also provide traction, okay, and transportation as well as manure on the farm. Mixed farming, when properly maintained, encourages intensification of land use for cropping through short fallows, okay? And mixed farming is a lower risk strategy than monoculture, especially when climate, pests and diseases and prices are unfavorable for one crop or type of livestock. So when crop fails, you can depend on the livestock. When livestock fails, you can depend on the crop. So that is why it is better than monoculture. And mixed farming also preserves the natural resources and environment, thus improving biodiversity and environmental benefits of the soil. Excuse me. So having said this, I have a short activity for you and I want you to list the cropping systems that you know and explain any two. List all the cropping systems, explain any two, and I also want you to state um, the factors that are responsible for the diversity in tropical agriculture. So I'll just look for 10 seconds and see if you can do that on your own. Yeah, it's important to note also that mixed farming systems are classified based on the size of land, the types of crops and animals, the geographical distribution and market orientation. Yeah, you cannot sell, for instance, you cannot come and open a pig farm in the north here because of religious beliefs, it will not thrive. Okay, so you have to know the geographical distribution, the size of land. Size of land is also important. You cannot do food, practice food farming and cropping on a small piece of land. And the kind of animals that can raise in that kind of place. Is it a tropical kind of animal? Is it a temperate? And the market orientation. These people, do they eat what I'm going to produce here? Or will I be stressing myself out without getting anything from it? So these are factors that you have to consider. And also, there are three categories in four different modes of farming. Okay, and these are the on-farm versus between farming mixing and mixing with crops. These are different types of mixed farming. Mixed farming, on farm versus between farming, mixing with crops or animal systems, and diversified versus integrated systems. These are different modes. Then the modes of farming refer to different degrees of land availability, like I said, labor inputs, and they range from plenty of land to shortage of land. You have to know what is suitable for you. Having said that, I hope you've had an educative time and I welcome your questions on our discussion forum. So it's important to join the discussion forum so that we can talk more about what we have learned. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.